So, Namaste and greetings. I, Riya Rawat, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, प्रभाव एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered today for a panel discussion on education, science and technology, research and development, and Union Budget 2025-26. As part of IMPRI's sixth annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of Union Budget 2025-26. This discussion is organized by Center for ICT for Development, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, as a part of IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. I welcome all of you to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for tuning into this discussion. Now let me introduce the esteemed gathering. Our chair for the session is Professor Sachidanand Sinha, visiting professor IMPRI and former professor Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. We welcome you, sir. The distinguished panelists for the session are Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy, Director, SRF Foundation, Gurgaon, Professor Binod Khadaria, a former professor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, Professor Mona Khare, Professor and Head, Department of Educational Finance, Director of University Grants Commission, Malviya Mission Teacher Training Center, and National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, New Delhi, India. Professor Nalin Bharti, Professor Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, and visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI. Professor Somen Chattopadhyay, Professor and Chairperson, Zakir Hussain Center for Educational Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Professor Provita Kunduji, Thematic Lead, Social Sector, Center for Budget and Governance Accountability, New Delhi, and Advocate Anubha Srivastav Sahaiji, President, India White Parents Association lawyer and child rights activist. And we also have Professor Rupa Manjari Ghoshji, expert, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, Committees in Physical Sciences, former Vice Chancellor of Shiv Nada University, Delhi NCR, former Professor of Physics and Dean of School of Physical Sciences at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome everyone. We look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Now, without any further ado, let us start the program. To begin today's program, we have a brief presentation by Ms. Aditi. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be sharing the screen.
Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible now, Aditi ji.
Okay, thank you. So let us start. As we are here to discuss about the Union Budget 2025 to 2026 of the education, science and technology and research and development sector. So let us start. In the first slide, we can just see the budget allocation. In 2024 to 2025, it was around 114050 rupees. And in the it has increased in the 2025 to 2026 is around the 128650 rupees. So there is a just a short breakdown of the funds. So around 38.9% is for the higher education and 61.1% for the school education and literacy. So in the slide, we can see the overall budget summary in the
Excuse me, your slides
actual
are not
year
moving. Slides are not moving. Slides are stuck on the first slide.
Ma'am,
now is it
The
ma'am,
slide.
can I share on your behalf? I have your slides with me.
okay, please.
I can just share that. Yes, ma'am, it's currently on the second slide.
Go ahead, Aditi.
Yeah, thank you. So in this second slide, we can see the budget allocation in 2024 to 2025. It is around the 114050 rupees, and it has increased in the 2025 to 2026 is around the 12865 rupees, and there is just a breakdown of the funds is around the 38.9%, and for the higher education, and second is the school educational literacy is around the 61.1% of the breakdown of the funds. Can you just move the second slide? Yeah, thank you. So in this slide, we can see the overall budget summary, like how budget has increased from the 2023 to 2024 to 2025 to 2026. So it is in the 2023 to 2024, it is around the 103325.1447 gross total, and it has increased in the 2025 to 2026 is the 142,69610, and there is a some net total. It has all net total of the budget has also increased from the 67972.8 to 7857.10. So yeah, we can see that there is just a increase in the budget allocation in the education sector. Can you move the next slide? Yeah, so there is some major schemes and institution for the government has allocated fund. First one is the Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan KVS, that is KVS, and second one is Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti NVS, NCRT, Samagra Shiksha, PM Poshan, STARS, PM Sri, New India Literacy Program. So in the 2025 to 2026, we can see that there is also increase in the for the schemes allocation in many schemes or institution. It is for KVS it has increased, NVS it is some less amount. So we can see that there is also increase in the for the some schemes and institution for major scheme allocation. Can you move the second slide? Yeah, it is just a brief of the Department of Higher Education budget overview from the 2023 to 2025 to 2026. As we see in the previous slide, government has increased their funds or budget allocation in the education sector. So there is we can also see that there is some increase in the budget 2025 to 2026. And in the revenue sector, in the capital, and also in the total, in the gross total budget, and also in the net total rupees is around the 50077.95 rupees in crore. So it in the whole scenario, we can see that net total has also increased. Can you move the next slide? Yeah, there is some education initiatives for the education sector. First one is a broadband connectivity in rural school. So it is mainly for the providing broad connectivity to all secondary schools, primary healthcare centers, especially in the rural area. So it is quite good initiative. And second one is Bharatiya Bhasha Pushtak scheme. It is for the providing digital Indian language books. Third one is the expansion of IITs. Government has expanded some in planning to expand some seats or allocation for the students is around the 6,500 more students. And fourth one is establishment of more 50,000 adult tinkering labs is for innovations and experiments in the school level. And the next one is AI Center of Excellence for Education. It is for the AI integration in the education sector to enhance learning qualities and employability. And last one is the expansion of medical education. It is around government has planned to increase the 75,000 medical 5 years in approximately 130% increase in the from the past decades. So these are the some education initiatives in the budget 2025 to 2026. So we can move from the next to the next slide. Yeah, it is just a short brief of the IIT expansion. In the, you can see that in 2014, total IIT students is around the 65,000, and in 2025 to 2026, it has completely increased in good numbers, 1.41 lakh, and government is planning to increase 6,500 seats in IITs. So it is good to increase the numbers in the IITs for the students. Can you move the next slide? Yeah, this is the science and technology initiatives by the government in 2025 to 2026. It is first one is National Mission on High Yielding Seeds. It is for the strengthening the developing high yielding crops, and it is also good for the climate resilient seeds. And next is the Mission for Cotton Productivity. It aims to boost the cotton production and export with new technologies to tackle declining yields and climate challenges. And third one is nuclear energy mission. So government India is planning to move to increase the at least 100 gigawatt of nuclear power by 2047. And last one is National Geospatial Mission. It is for the aims to develop geospatial infrastructure and data to modernize land records, support urban planning, and enhance Earth observation. So these are the some initiative by the government for increasing in the science and technology field. Can you move the next slide? Yeah, this is the last one is research and development initiatives by the government. So government has allocated, is planning to allocate approx 20,000 crore for the private sector research and development initiative. It is a good in investing in people and for the innovation in the economy. Next one is deep tech fund of funds for startup. So invest in entrepreneurs using AI and tech to tackle global challenges. Third one is PM research fellowships. So government is supports talented students pursuing doctoral research in India to through the 10,000 fellowships. And fourth one is Gene Bank for Crops Germplasm. It is for the storehouses for plant genetic resources essential for crop improvement. And the last one is Gyan Bharatam Mission. It is for the survey, documentation, and conservation over 1 crore manuscripts with academic institutions, museums, libraries, and collectors to save the and modernize the all the manuscripts in the digital form. So yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi ji, for your presentation. And it is now my honor and privilege to invite Professor Binod Khadaria ji to initiate the discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure coming back here. It's become an annual event. Last year also I was here, and Sachi, my friend, I don't see him. He has some technical problem perhaps. Well, thank you for sharing the data. Certainly we need to look at data and then also at the narrative of the budget. So very briefly, if I look at the overall data, then the budget estimate, I'm not looking at the revised estimates. They are irrelevant at the moment. Only the budget allocations are comparable with last year. And last year it was broadly 48 lakh crore, the total. Now it is 50 lakh crore. So it looks like 4% increase in the overall budget. And same for education. Education, 1,25,000 crore. And then we have this last year, this year 1,28,000 crore, rounded figures. So if we look at these figures, then we cannot ignore the rate of inflation. If the rate of inflation by conservative estimates of the government itself is 5%, then the 4% increase in the overall budget from 48 lakh crore to 50 lakh crore is actually an illusion. There is actually if you discount it by 5%, then it's not a 4% increase, it's 1% decline in the overall budget. That we have to keep in mind. And similarly, if we look at education budget, I'm not going into the breakup between higher education and secondary education or lower levels of education, then we find that this was 2.6% of the total budget last year. This year, it is 2.5% of the total. So that percentage itself has gone down without discounting for the inflation. If we discount it for inflation, then in real terms, there is a reduction of 2.6% in education also. So this is something that needs to be kept in mind throughout. Last year, I was comparing allocations to education with defense and Northeast allocation. I'm not going to do that this year. I'm going to draw your attention to commerce and industry because that's one of the focal points, and energy. So if we look at these two sectors in comparison to education, then we find that in the commerce and industry sector, we have a 33% hoping increase of 33% as compared to 2.4% in education. And that too, if we discounted by 5% inflation, that 33% increase in commerce and industry would stand at 28%, whereas in education, it is standing at 2.6%. Similarly, for energy, it was a 19% increase, and discounting, it comes to 14% increase. So you can see that there is a deceleration in allocation in education sector as a whole. And of course, we need to keep in mind the receipts also. Receipts, it says that there will be a 4.4% fiscal deficit, and then there is only 35 lakh crore other than borrowing. I'm not going into the details of that. What I will flag here, last year I had said, what is the significance of the 6% allocation target right from the National Education Commission to reach 6%? We had not given a thought to this earlier, but I mentioned that this was because the education's contribution to GDP was more than 6%. And that's what we were asking to be returned to the education sector. We are not begging. This year, we find that it is not going to exceed or come closer to 6% even. That, I think, is something which still remains at the back of our mind. Having said that, I have heard the presentation of different targets, different schemes that are going to come in terms of number of students of IITs at the higher education level, 100% increase to 1.35 lakh in in the last 10 years. That's the increase which has been flagged, and additional infrastructure. 5 post 2014 IITs will be given additional seats of 6,500. The amount would be given 6,500 crore. Patna would have a hostel and extra infrastructure and so on. The narrative goes on. We can look into the details with a microscope. But what are the main points of this budget? The main points of this budget are the 4 engines. 4 engines are agriculture, MSME, investment with a focus on private sector, and exports. Now, this is where I think the novelty of this particular budget lies in terms of giving a priority to agriculture. Now, in agriculture also, I found that the Honorable Finance Minister very imaginatively began with talking about pulses, which is a vegetarian diet, and fisheries, which is a non-vegetarian diet. And I thought these are both sources of protein, which is required for good health. Good health is required for good education, and good education and health are required for higher productivity, which is dipping. Why it is dipping? Because demand has dipped, employment has dipped. All these need to be given boost. That was explicitly mentioned. What has been kept in the perspective is Vikasit Bharat in 2047, which is 22 years away from now. So the budget has different, landmarks like 22 years from now, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 1 year from now. So this is how we need to understand to reach the Vikasit Bharat level in 2047 with 100% good quality school education, 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment, 70% of women in economic activities, and farmers to make India the food basket of the world. And 10 broad areas focusing on 4 categories of people. They are called Garib, means poor, youth, of course, youth means Yuva, Annadata, the farmer, and Nari, women. So this is what the perspective is. And if we come to higher education, then there are some contradictions that I find. First of all, the underlying assumption under this budget, I also listened to the economic survey which was presented just before the budget, and the chief economic advisor presenting it with a press conference was trying to say that the focus of this budget is going to be deregulation. Now when it comes to deregulation, to bring in private sector in a massive way. That's the purpose, and that has been explicitly mentioned, because in the trilogy of government, private sector, and academia, the private sector needs to be brought up, government needs to withdraw, and academia has to be encouraged in R&D particularly. I find that these narratives actually do not fit with each other. Why that is so? First of all, investing in people, investing in people, that has been explicitly mentioned. To increase productivity, wages have to be raised, because if more wages means more purchasing power, and that would boost the productivity that we have. All other things are there in terms of broadband connectivity to schools, Bharatiya Bhasha, digital books, and so on and so on. Those are details. Let me not go into the details, but come to the broad focus. Now, one thing, the IIT, and of course, the last engine is export. So export of what? Export of goods or export of people? We have to keep in mind that our highly educated graduates are not given employment at home. So they are exported. And that's happening across the board. We look at the recent agreements with Japan in medium skilled category, with Greece, medium skilled category, Israel, medium skilled category, and Germany, high skilled category. In Germany, the quota, visa quota, was 10,000 per year that they will accept from India. At one go, when there was a meeting between the Chancellor and our Prime Minister, at one go, this was multiplied by 8 times. So that now 90,000 highly skilled, mostly engineers, would be given visa to come to Germany. So why, that is the question. I mean, that's because we cannot provide them employment at home. Useful employment is not being provided. So that is where I need to understand that in these frontier categories of human capital, engineering, medical education, and so on, what is the plan for their employment? That needs to be spelled out, along with giving us promises that these are going to be educated. Are they going to be usefully employed at home? Or are we going to be just having satisfaction of sending them abroad and expanding our diaspora? That is a question that I think we need to ask ourselves in terms of looking at this um, particular budget, which has many qualities in terms of, in principle, I would say the budget has certain very important path-breaking, positive aspects that need to be harvested properly. But for that, we need a blueprint. We need a roadmap, and that roadmap is still to come. That's not there, inherent in the protest. I find the talk of there are contradictions between the economic survey presentation and the presentation of the budget, for example. Right? I started by drawing your attention to inflation, to the rate of inflation. Why am I taking 5% as the rate of inflation? Because that's the average. That's the average which is being projected. The rate of inflation for food products, it is admitted by the economic survey presentation by our chief economic advisor, Dr. Anand Nageshwar, in the press conference, is that the food price inflation is 8%, as high as 8%. I found it amusing to listen to that presentation where the entire team which was presenting the economic survey were nodding at each other when the chief economic advisor said, well, this is 8%, but if you take out three items, onion, potato, and tomato, then it would come down to 5%. I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry because that sounded like I was in 18th century France when Mary Antoinette said, if you don't have bread, then eat cakes. It's that kind of a logic of saying that, see, potato, onion, and tomato are the major ingredients of household diet. And the shopping list, shopping basket that we have, the major component goes into these three categories. Now, if we keep taking out these things, then we are creating an illusion that the inflation rate is lower than what it is actually. I'm not going to take more time. I think my time is going to be up. I would like to conclude by saying that I must congratulate the Honorable Finance Minister uh, for doing something that she missed last time. In the last budget, I had said that the last budget last year was Finance Minister's 7th budget in a row. And I gave the allegory of Sat Janam, Sat Fere, seven years each. And this was the 7 years experience was not reflected in the presentation of the budget last year. But I'm not sure whether our Honorable Finance Minister heard about IMPRI's initiative and listened to our discussion here. This time, she did not miss that. She took the Sat Janam, she acknowledged that, and then she acknowledged it in her final master stroke. That was to woo the India's middle class by the direct taxes, the concessions that have been given in the direct taxes. If you have noticed, I am comparing these Sat Janam, Sat Fere, etc., with the 7 slabs that have been provided. Each slab is of 4 lakh rupees, starting with 0, and then goes up to 30 lakh rupees of direct taxes. That's a huge concession that has been given to woo the middle class. And on top of that, the exemption limit has been raised from 7 lakh to 12 lakh, hoping increase. And I would say that I tend to think, because the finance minister actually recited 2 poems, couplets of poems during her presentation, which is very inspiring. And I thought that at the back of the mind of Honorable Finance Minister was, after that Sat Janam was, or Sat Fere or Shaptapadi, was the Ashtapadi. And the Ashtapadi is something that Jayadev had composed in the 12th century to narrate the bonding between Krishna and the gopis. So our Krishna this time has been successfully, been wooing the middle class. Let's wait and see the gopinis in the middle class whether they deliver or not in terms of having a productive consumption. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to invite Dr. Pratibha Kunduji to share her insights. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I will focus on school education. Already Aditya has a presentation and Professor Khadria has also very nicely portrayed the overview. I'll add fewer points from the perspective of school education. So we have, already sir has said that the total fiscal headroom this year is around 51 lakh crore. And when we look at the budget, we have seen that it has been predicted the economy will grow at 10.1% rate. If we look at the receipt side, total receipt has also increased by around 7%. And even the tax revenue component has also increased. Tax to GDP ratio is at 12%, which is stagnant, not increased, but it is actually, it's maintained from the last budget estimate. In this fiscal headroom, we have got a budget of around 1.28 lakh crore, where 61% is going to Department of School Education and 39% to Department of Higher Education. Now, if we compare the Department of School Education's budget from the previous year's budget estimate, it's around 7.6% increase. In absolute terms, it is 5,564 crore. And that is largely on account of the increase in the budget of Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. And here, whatever figures we are saying, it's all in nominal terms. So if we convert into real terms, actually there is hardly any increase, very marginal increase. But if this budget converted into the total ministry's education budget converted into in terms of country's GDP, it comes out as 0.22%. And which was in 2023-24 actual figure, if we take, then also it was around 0.4% of GDP. So again, there is a decline. Now, we are talking about national education policy. We are talking about meeting the goals of or recommendations suggested in the national education policy, and where one of the commitment is for 6% of GDP, where center and states together will meet that. But only, and we know that education is in concurrent list, but if the responsibility is continuously shifting towards states, and where states are also struggling for revenue mobilization, then we can see that that particular target, it's far behind. The 85-86 target is, we are nowhere near 25 in 25-26. Overall, currently it's around 3.8% of GDP is being spent on total public education, which is supposed to be 6%, and where union government's contribution is 0.2%. So we can see where we are. Now, let's look at what is the pattern of this budget, of school education budget. Now we are focusing the distribution. If we see of the school education budget, the establishment as usual contributes 0.1% of the total budget. The central sector schemes, which is largely the National Means Come Merit Scholarship and Dhruv scheme, which constitutes 0.5% of the budget. So largely the budget is for two components. One is the central sector expenditure on autonomous bodies like Kendriya Vidyalaya, Navodaya Vidyalaya, which constitutes around 19% of the budget, and centrally sponsored schemes, which is like Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, PM Poshan, that constitutes around 80% of the budget. But the question now is, within this composition, these are autonomous body institutions or centrally sponsored schemes, how that budget is getting financed. We look at the budget, and every year we think about that the gross budgetary support will increase for education, given the education is one of the, human rights, one of the priorities of government as said in different policies and commitments. But 81% of this year's budget is getting financed through education cess. And if we look deep dive a little bit, then within schemes, 100% Samagra Shiksha budget, 100% PM Poshan budget, 100% National Means Come Merit Scholarship budget are getting financed through education cess. Now, the challenge is that when we look at the CAG report, when they try to look how this the education cess is getting used, we have seen the huge amount of money is actually lying idle. The cess money, what is specifically for dedicated for certain purposes, is not being utilized properly. And so that's why there is challenge that when government is so much focusing on financing education through cess. Now, coming to these specific schemes, the pattern that started for the last 3-4 years, similar pattern is observed in this year's budget. The budget is more towards exemplar schools or model schools like Kendriya Vidyalaya, Navodaya Vidyalaya, and PM3. These three particular kind of schools, model schools, they constitutes 28% of the school education department's budget. And Samagra Shiksha Abhijan constitutes 52%. Why I brought this comparison? That because this over the Samagra Shiksha Abhijan is the key flagship program which actually caters the larger number of children who are studying in different government and government aided schools. So around 17 crore of children are being served through Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, whereas in Kendriya Vidyalaya, the number of students is around 1.4 crore, in Navodaya Vidyalaya 27 lakh. So if we then convert this expenditure towards KV, Navodaya Vidyalaya, Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, the per student expenditure comes like this. So for Kendriya Vidyalaya, it's 68,000. For Navodaya Vidyalaya, it's 1,92,000. Whereas for any general government or government aided run schools, the per student expenditure is around 2,500. So the way the budget is getting, the design is such that the budget is getting distributed, that more focus is toward exemplary school or exclusivity instead of general universalization of education. Let's talk about PM3. PM3, it has been the 24% increase in PM3's budget. But PM3's target is around 11,920 schools are there at present. Target is 12,000 schools. So 11,000 schools, we have given 77,500 crore. But budget is not only about budget estimate, it's also about the spending. So if we look back and look at what was the pattern of spending in 23-24, actually the PM3 not able to spend the PM3 budget was around in 23-24 it was around 4,000 crore, and it has spent only 1,200 crore. So there is huge unspent balances under this scheme. Similarly, PM Poshan, it has been said that because of the inflation, there is need for increase in revising the unit cost, and the unit cost for PM Poshan has changed. It has now 0.5 for primary schools, 5 rupees 45 paise to 6 rupees 19 paise, for upper primary 8 rupees to 9 rupees. But midday meal budget is actually unchanged. Midday meal, the PM Poshan is unchanged. These are broader picture, but then when we are talking about Bikasit Bharat, so how inclusive is this education budget? That question needs to be answered and needs to be looked at. And when we're talking about inclusivity, the fiscal policy in terms of scholarships or stipends play a very important role. And that is more important for students from marginalized section of population, whether from scheduled caste or scheduled tribe or minorities. Some example. Let's look at the Ministry of Minority Affairs budget. It implements 3 scholarship, pre-matric, post-matric, and means cum merit scholarship. And the budget for the ministry has already, in 2024-25, it has asked for the money to my Ministry of Finance. Already it has got much lesser amount in terms of approval. But what is important, what they have got in 23-24, not able to spend most of the money. So of the 23-24, 3,097 crore was the allocation, and they have surrendered 2,000 crore to the government. And where the money they have surrendered? Post-matric scholarship, 815 crore, because delay in revalidation of application. Free coaching and alliance, 18 crore, because non-disbursal of stipend. Similarly, pre-matric scholarship, 337 crore they have surrendered. So we can see that, and everywhere the reason has been given that delay in the validation of application by states. So a huge amount of money which is getting surrendered by Ministry of Minority Affairs is mostly for the scholarships. Coming to schedule, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, a similar picture when it comes to the budget for scholarships. Either those are unchanged or there is marginal increase, whether it's post-matric, pre-matric. But what is the extent of, the how useful that, or how much it is catering, that is very important. Suppose the SC post-matric scholarship, the target was 69 lakh students, whether it has covered only 28 lakh students. Similarly, for pre-matric scholarship, target was for 27 lakh students, it has covered 14 lakh. So again, and for this for this Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, similar kind of picture, because a huge amount of funds surrendered. And again, this 880 crore for post-matric scholarships, which is basically 14% of the total fund. Then 10% under pre-matric scholarships, then 87% under free coaching and hostels facilities. So these are the very important factors or determinants which actually helps the marginalized children or vulnerable population to be in the system, be part of the completing the education. But these are the areas where we have seen that money is not getting. There is every year there is question of that states are, the blame game is going on. States are not submitting, states are saying that the money is not flowing from the center. And importantly, Ministry of Minority Affairs have reported in its Parliamentary Standing Committee report that after 2021-22 till date, none of the scholarships have actually been approved, whether pre-matric or post-matric scholarships. Ministry of Tribal Affairs in that way is in a better shape, because there is some improvement in terms of budget allocation, and there are new schemes have been launched, and it's a kind of, it will work in convergence, where 13 departments will spend towards that. And again, Eklamber Model Residential School has got a huge budget. But again, if we look at the spending pattern, in 23-24, only 41% budget of the Eklamber Model Residential School was utilized. And they are targeting 740 schools and 38,000 teachers with this huge budget of 7,089 crore. So looking at this pattern of spending in the other departments who are largely responsible in terms of interventions to scholarship, it questions the whole idea of inclusivity in the school education system. And this is actually getting reflected in our next stage, the completion of secondary education, or following that, getting job or employment opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insights. Now, I would like to request Professor Sachidanand Sinha to kindly chair and moderate the session from here. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you. I think, Professor Khadria was doing the job, and he should continue doing it, because I missed the initial part. But nevertheless, these are now let's go over to Professor Rupa Manjari for her initial comments on the budget, particularly with research and development and science and technology. We would like to hear from her.
Okay, thanks a lot, Professor Sinha, and thanks IMPRI for organizing this. It's a huge panel, and I was down with a bad flu, so I was coughing a bit. So unlike myself, for these kind of sessions, I prepared some slides. Ria, you have those? Do you have my slides, or should I just share my screen? You are on mute.
Ma'am, you can also try sharing.
Okay. Just see if you can.
We can see it.
Can you see it?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am, it's visible.
Okay.
Perfect. So,
We can see it.
okay. So, since it's education, S&T, and R&D, I would not touch on the school education part at all. I'll stick to what I am familiar with and as directed by Professor Sinha. So, science and technology, research and development. So, I'm not going to get into the numbers that well. Aditi has done a great job, and Pratibha really gave us a very good idea, very critical analysis of the school budget part. But I think it goes without saying what I'm going to say, and I'll be brief because it's a huge panel. We are running a little late. The basic things that I keep on finding missing year after year. And there are some lot of good points made in this budget. So there's some thoughts in the right direction, but maybe it's falling short in some way. So it goes without saying for whatever we are doing, and this is not just self-propagating, but education is the most important pillar in nation building. And I'll take it all the way to higher education, because what we call demographic dividend will become a demographic nightmare if you do not impart the right kind of education. And I think that's really is the point. So the budget, you have seen already, but in STEM, AI, and innovation, the allocation is, I tried to sort of compile whatever is there in that. The ones in red are the ones that I'm going to touch upon, just not about the amount, but the principle that works behind these kind of allocations. So one thing that before, I would not spend much time on this because others have already touched upon some of it. This 10K tech fellowships and all that you see, expanding IITs and medical education, medical all right, but there is a stress on IISc Bangalore and all the IITs for good reasons. I know they would deliver because their processes are efficient, but it sort of is not representing the whole of India, and in some ways falling short of, universities are totally out of this special favors. And if that is so, then we are not really addressing the deficiencies or challenges of India. And it's not just deficiencies, it's also an opportunity missed. So focus on only IITs, focus on only IISc Bangalore is something that I think we should really seriously look into. And I'll come to this point later again. But let's look at this Center of Excellence on AI in Education. There are several missions. Nuclear energy is probably something that I'll just touch upon, and R&D and innovation, what we are planning to do, time permitting. So first, it's something that is close to my heart that I keep on try to sort of build consensus on this, is that one needs to understand technology. Technology can, of course, address big issues of access, affordability in the higher education system, while maintaining maybe reasonable quality. If you put in some systems in place, it also allows personalization according to the learner's choices and abilities and speed, and that you can do it at scale. So it's all very good. So we do need digital literates as well as digital enablers or innovators, people who should be familiar with digitization, people who would actually create such digital tools for all of us. So this is something no debate on this, so we need to do that. But much of the problem that we face today deals with infrastructure and the divide between have and have not. And that's something that we saw during COVID time as well, when we went online, et cetera, for access. So, but that sort of is a problem. But I want to make a bigger issue, is that one needs to understand, with all this craze for AI and all, justifiably, but we need to understand and keep in mind that technology is not a solution by itself for all our problems of food, clean air, clean water, healthcare, energy. You cannot eat a computer program. You need food for that. So research, for example, in basic sciences, will continue to be the foundation of inventions that the world has been waiting for. And those inventions, as opposed to what people call innovation, which is just as a commercial sense, but food, clean air, clean water, healthcare, energy, cost of it is rising, would need you to put in physical solutions. Physical kind, if education leads to R&D of this physical kind to keep the desperate dream of a sustainable world alive, then AI, artificial intelligence technology, will be an enabler or a multiplier. So if you multiply 0 by any large number, the result would still be 0. So I think there is not sufficient emphasis given on how we are lagging behind in physical solutions of the kind, and education has to lead to R&D of this physical kind. The second point is a push for nuclear power. I mean, this is a debatable thing, and I think one can spend an hour debating on it, but certain facts are very clear. What has been proposed in this budget is that there should be a nuclear energy mission for research and development, 5 SMRs. SMRs are small module reactors to be set up, and 2047 nuclear target is 100 gigawatt. And if you look at the worldwide, I mean, I took the data from the internet, hopefully they're correct. So nuclear power, as share of total power consumed, India is at 3% of total power consumed, whereas France leads this race with almost 72%. So 3% is really minuscule, and we should probably look at it, given that India's commitment at COP26, which happened in 22 February, 3 years back, that the commitment was 500 gigawatt of non-fossil power by 2030. Now, the only point that I have in this, well, actually two. One I'll make immediately, and the other one is going to be a thread throughout, that 50% of this commitment of non-fossil power should have been from renewable energy. That's what India stated in February 22. So what happened to that? So how is the Union budget supporting R&D of sustainable technologies, solar, wind, electric vehicles? How is R&D in climate change being funded? How is the budget encouraging research into circular economies, recycling, sustainable resource management? It's a huge problem, and India has also been used as a dumping ground. Is the budget providing any initiatives to attract young talent to science and technology research careers, research and development careers? That's extremely important. It's easy to learn a program in 3 months' time. You don't need to come to a higher education institute for that. But there are serious things that one needs to do where you need to really attract young talent and train them. And some of it is good to have international collaboration. The money gives all these directions. And in the budget, I didn't see any special initiative to do any of this. The third point I want to talk about is the mission mode. Of course, we want to be reliant in all these big things. Semiconductor manufacturing has been going on, 5G, AI, quantum computing. So I have been involved with the National Quantum Mission as an expert from the beginning. So most of you know what's going on, but 6,000, initially 8,000 crore was promised, then it became 6,000, then in reality it became 4,000, and now it's even less. But in 30th September last, 4 thematic hubs were set up in ISC and IIT, again ISC and IIT only, but these hubs are supposed to form these technical groups in quantum computing, quantum communication, quantum sensing and metrology, and quantum materials and devices. I don't expect you to read this chart, but this is something we study a lot that, what is the status of quantum computing? People have predicted to more than 10,000 qubits. IBM, for example. Qubit is not the full story, but number of units that you have for a predicted quantum computer by IM is 10,000. Where are we? In late August 2024, we produce a 6-qubit quantum processor. Now, it's a great beginning, no doubt, but it's totally lagging behind whatever is required to make this machine working. Now, McKinsey has estimated that 5,000 quantum computers will be operational by 2030. How many from India? I'm not sure. The hardware and software necessary for handling the most complex problems won't be available till 2035 or later. So we need more quantum algorithms, which is severely missing. And I don't see any initiative in India where this is a great opening, but not much actually has been happening. Look at quantum communication. In February 22, a joint team of DRDO and IIT Delhi showed a 10-kilometer secure communication link. 10 kilometer. Then in September, this is using fiber. But in free space, we have gone up to 300 meters, whereas in 2017, China had established more than 2,000 kilometer ultra-secure ground link. Now, so we are lagging behind a lot, and now it's good to have these kind of initiatives, but something is missing. And without proper planning and investment, the tragedy is that we'll always lag behind and play only catch up. And that's not really the vision that I think India should go for. So what I find lacking year after year is no shortcuts to investment for capacity development. And that's something, we have a 6,000 crore budget for National Quantum Mission. We don't find enough people. So the capacity development and quality capacity development is absolutely necessary. I was working with some people to look at the energy data. We don't have any proper recording of any data, record and analysis. And if you don't do without data churning, of course, there cannot be any insight. So just throwing some numbers without any basis, without a proper record, without proper analysis of what's the consumption pattern, what's the generation shortfall right now, and what exactly should be the solution, we don't have those insights in the policy budget. And the last point I want to make is how will the effectiveness of the budget allocation be monitored? This is something that's important to keep in mind because year after year, I've been also saying it, partly is getting done. And so we need mechanisms that are to be put in place to ensure that funds are used efficiently. The point I'm making is this cannot just be a financial audit. There's a lot of technical and educational expertise and experience that is needed for it. So this is something that we must have a report card because we don't seem to be learning from the past missions. And so that's really is my point. And I would stop here right now and take up some issues later on. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rupa. Thank you for throwing up very significant points, particularly with on the question of research and development. We would certainly look forward to hearing from you, particularly on science education, because there are a number of universities where science departments do not have adequate number of teachers. We have nearly about 60% of higher secondary schools where science labs do not function. They don't even have science in the curriculum in those schools. So I think there are larger questions which also would partly answer the points that you were talking about, that there are no takers, so maybe there are no candidates who could perhaps man different kinds of labs. So I think the beginning has to be done where it really needs to be done. So we'll come back to that to hear.
That's what I mean, capacity development. And very honest capacity development. You can't just throw money. Money can only do
That's
It's
true.
something.
Absolutely. And that's also visible, if you have 50,000 centers of what you call it, Atal Tinkering Centers and so on and so forth. Yeah. And you don't have, it has been going on for nearly about 4 to 5 years, and we have no assessment of how these tinkering labs are working, because they're all working in collaboration with the private sectors, you see, and they're located mostly in the urban localities. The rural and small towns have been completely bypassed. So, and this I'm saying on the basis of the work that I did for the Karnataka government recently, and we did extensive field work and visited quite a few number of schools, both urban and rural areas. And Ms. Kundu also highlighted the question of what is really happening with the deprived communities. The school segment is very important. I just wanted to point out that if we need to look at the statistics which the government of India has just brought out in public domain. This is the EU-DIAS data. And you'll be surprised that with whatever efforts that we have been making, and despite all the commitments of the national education policy, the number of children that has gone down from 2020, 22-23 in 23-24 is over 1 crore from school. And this is something that needs to be, the document really tells you that, there is, the figures are not matching because we are really trying to match the Aadhaar and all that, which I don't think is correct, because the process of EU-DIAS data collection is school-based. And if the schools are reporting decline in the numbers, then this is something which really needs to be looked at, in spite of whatever that we are really doing. So that's something, which I thought I'll just share with the panelists here. Can we quickly go over to Professor Shramin Chattopadhyay, and hear from him, and then to Professor Mona Khare, and then we'll go to Nalin.
Okay, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to join very esteemed panel like previous years. Professor Khadria mentioned it has become an annual event, so it's nice to be here. I'll be very brief. I would begin by saying that the union budget or budgetary allocation for the education sector, I'll be focusing mainly on higher education, has to be understood in the context of what is the basic approach the government has been exhibiting, particularly as articulated in the national education policy, towards the education sector as a whole. But I'll be focusing on higher education. That philosophy, to understand the role of education, as Professor Ghosh said, is the most important pillar for our society, for building our society. NEP states, and this is a very important statement, that the gross enrollment rate has to be raised to 50% in higher education by 2035, and 50% of those enrolled, the 50%, should have exposure to skill education and vocational education. The second, the government is trying to reorient the education sector, repurposing the education sector in two different ways. One is how to cater to the industry. An industry will serve the economy. And there are two channels for doing this. One is the skill education, and other is the knowledge that we generate in the university sector. And third is the inculcation of values so that we become responsible citizens. I'll come to the budgetary allocation for that a little later. Now, when the education sector is being reoriented to serve the economy in through different channels, skills and research and innovation, the overarching thing is Atmanirbhar. somehow I feel that the very thrust on Atmanirbharata is underpinning this approach to the education budgetary allocation. Now, Atmanirbharata for whom? And how do you conceptualize Atmanirbharata? Atmanirbharata is actually being focused on the individual. It's like saying self-responsibilizing agent. And this Atmanirbharata is very narrowly defined. If you don't do enough for the capacity building up, the capacity build-up of the institutions, the higher education institutions, the Professor Ghosh rightly mentioned. Now, the impact of the skill is very important. I mean, that is throughout the budget in the last couple of years, you will see that how we can impart skill. And for that, what is important, the government thinks, is to give freedom to the students to choose a basket of courses from a much wider variety across the institution, across the discipline, so that they can equip themselves to respond to the demand coming from the industry. Because the demand generated for the graduates is determined by the adoption of the technology and aggregate demand, which is out of the government control. Now, this reorientation of the education has to be achieved when there is a fiscal constraint. That means we can't spend more money, as Pratibha and Professor Khatri also mentioned, that in real terms, in per capita terms, the budgetary allocation cannot be increased. So therefore, the government is actually actually moving towards giving more loans to those who would like to start business, like the startup. Now, in this, the very concept of research, as Professor Ghosh has mentioned, I'm just repeating, has been somehow reconceptualized. Number one is the focus is on innovation, startup, taking it outside the university sphere, as the R&D budget would show that it is a boost to the private sector. And the second, the very conception, and so there are two, the domains is being widened at the expense of the universities. I would like to say here that the lab running expenses for the School of Physical Science, for the School of Life Sciences in different universities, I would not name the universities here, has been dwindling, right? So the foundation is getting eroded or weaker for doing basic science. And then you're taking science as if innovation is everything, as Professor Ghosh has mentioned. Now, so the fiscal constraint is the overwhelming thing. So how to achieve this? So I'll come to, if you understand this, then I will come to some of the budgetary allocations made for higher education. And this rise in the budgetary allocation for different heads would actually indicate the basic approach to education reform. And let me say here that funding alone cannot do the job, right? You have to also look at regulation, other than the point that Professor Ghosh was mentioning, that funding alone cannot build up the capacity. You have to think beyond that. But what I'm saying, that's absolutely true. But you have to also look at what regulation is trying to signal us, how to mobilize more funds. There are three dimensions of regulation I would like to mention here. One is that, the focus on higher education financing agency, that the best of the institutions centrally funded are being asked to take loans. The second is the institutional autonomy in financial matters. That means we are now being asked to generate resources, corporate social responsibility and all. And third, even the faculty member are now being also asked to generate fund, and that will be treated as one of the achievements which will be considered by the duly constituted selection board for recruitment and career progression of the faculty, as reflected in the recent UGC 2025 draft regulation. Now, let me come to very briefly about the allocation of budget under different sectors. But I will compare the budgetary allocation over the revised for a reason that the revised reflects how much money was actually spent, though it is a revised estimate, rather than what was budgeted for. For general education and technical education, there is a huge gap because of this focus on skill and the way science and technology have been conceptualized. It is only 1.2% that is given in the higher education budget. And for technical education, it is 11.3%. But the capital outlay as a percentage of the total expenditure is very, very less, is less than 0.01% or so. So it's virtually the capital expenditure, that means to expand the capacity, the onus lies on the institution, either by borrowing or by taking money or do whatever. The second important item which struck me is that, Professor Ghosh knows that SNU is an institution of eminence, though as being a private, you did not get much money in the sense you did not get any money. But the budget for world-class university, or which is called institution of eminence, as mentioned, the budget has been reduced to 0. And similarly, for internationalization, the budgetary allocation again has been reduced to 0. Somehow, this is quite perplexing. I'm unable to understand why all on a sudden, either the government has given up hope that the public funded WCU or Institution of Eminence are not going to be anywhere near 100 or 150 in the world ranking in the next 7, 8, 10 years, or why the budget for internationalization has been brought to 0, I'm unable to understand. The second important element is the Indian knowledge system. Though the budget is very small, but the rise in the budget is quite significant. The budgetary wise devised is almost 5 times. Last year also we spent what was budgeted for, or actual, I think, 3 times. Student financial aid, yes, there has been an increase quite significantly, but out of this, the PM research fellowship is there. That means, there's a significant rise, and it was mentioned by the FM in a speech. For digital e-learning, the budgetary rise is there, 57%, which was quite significant in the last year, almost to the tune of 4 times rise, quite significant. And that is the purpose, that the digital e-learning and all the pluses and minuses, all these things are there, but the focus is on digitalization of the entire education space, school and higher education, to achieve this rise in the gross enrollment rate without there being any commensurate rise in the budgetary allocation, plus to foster student mobility. Research and innovation, no matter how it has been conceptualized, Professor Ghosh has already said, the budgetary allocation is 4.4 times, which is a significant jump. Apprenticeship, 57% jump. Center for Excellence in AI, 81% jump. But if you look at the universities, central universities, the budgetary allocation is only 3.9%. So if you take into consideration the inflation and the rise in the enrollment rate, so there is surely a decline. AICT, because of the importance, is a 45% jump in the budgetary allocation. Last year, the revised estimate fell short of the budgetary estimate, I believe. UGC is not much, but IITs, IIM, NITs, ISA, there's a budget cut. But all these IITs, IIMs, NITs, and ISA and all, the budgetary allocation is quite insignificant, though IISC is going to get some money, or not much, but gross term is only 6%. IISCR actually is a 9 percentage point fall. But overall, therefore, overall, how we are going to build up the capacities of the universities, there I would like to say that no, we are not doing much, because we are not spending on science labs, as Professor Sinha rightly mentioned. And so therefore, somehow you are focusing on innovation, startup, writing, learning code and all. But what about the foundation, the mode 1, as we say, has been well explained. So just 2 broad conclusions I would like to mention here. Number 1, there are also disparities among the state. So the total education budget has to be looked at by adding up the center plus state, and there are disparities in the fiscal health of the state. So in terms of the regional distribution of funds for education, I found that there is a tendency for accentuation in this very distribution of funds. And secondly, the capacity build-up. If you want to generate competition, asking us to generate more money or mobilize more funds, or start up an Atmanirbharta and choose our education basket, course basket, and equip ourselves with that. It's like a lifelong learning, perpetually lifelong learning. All these things will actually, given the digital divide, rural-urban divide, and institutional divide, somehow I feel that this disparities that exist are simply going to be more and more accentuated. And the last point I would like to say that, look, we are going to focus on IKS, Indian Knowledge System, and multidisciplinary and all. But this credit thing, which is going to assume, will be overwhelming in the mind of the students, how to acquire credit and get the degree. Somehow this basic purpose of education, I'm not too sure whether is going to serve the society, if not for the economy. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Professor Shraman. It would also be interesting if you could extend at a later stage, how you really look at the widening disparities across the states. As we all know that much of the budget or the expenditure that takes place in different states, both in the school sector and higher education, particularly universities and colleges, much of that is being borne by the states themselves. And central government has very little contribution to that effect. So given that you have a certain kind of an architecture that you were really looking at, which you pointed out, that the government is really looking at a different kind of a structure of education, changing the paradigm, which is all very right. But as you and Professor Khadri also pointed out, there are inconsistencies, and there are things which are difficult for us to in fact understand as to why it's happening. Something which is quite basic, like what Rupa Manjari said, खाना खाना है तो अनाज तो पैदा करना पड़ेगा ना, तो वो तो नहीं है तो फिर मुश्किल है, तो फिर आगे हम कुछ भी कर लें, कैप्सूल में खाना मिलेगा फिर. तो मोना जी के पास हम चलते हैं. Professor Mona Khare, please. And since it's already 7:50 in India time, I'm sitting here. For me, there is no problem, but I think all of you must be getting late for your dinner. So if we can have very pointed reflections on the budget, things which have already been made, we can skip them and just concentrate on a couple of them, which we have not talked about. So, Professor, over to Professor Khare.
So thank you very much, Professor Sinha. And as you very rightly said, the esteemed fellow panelists have already pointed out at so many important aspects of the recently announced budget. Just to start from three important concerns which were raised by various speakers before me. One, of course, everyone talked about the real increase in the budgetary allocations and also the per student increases or allocations that would be available, which is going to be a concern. So I'm not going to touch upon any of these, whether then this kind of a budget will be adequate enough or sufficient enough for the kind of aspirational way that we have paved out for ourselves given the NEP 2020, and also to what Professor Ghosh mentioned, whether money is the only thing that we require and the capacities that would be needed and the quality that would be needed to actually make use and utilize the funds. Someone has also mentioned about the underutilization of the funds, which continues to exist as a major concern, as also pointed out by many of our earlier CAG reports, and one recent work that we did with the CAG to look at the education sector audit reports across the states, which again pointed out at this very concerning dimension of underutilization of funds. So I will be very brief as you asked me to. I'm just going to look at when we look at the allocations or budget, there are three dimensions that one may like to look at. One is the continuity, whether we are able to continue with the kind of promises that we made in the previous years. The second is in terms of inclusivity, because given the kind of disparities that exist in our economy, in our country, and also the kind of divide that we have already seen post the pandemic going up. So inclusivity may be the second factor. And third, a very important component of skills and employability. Now, if we look at the basic aim of the national education policy, it talks about making India a global knowledge hub, and that of a skilled human resource base. We are now also talking about putting the Indian knowledge system at the global map. So all of these do get focused in the currently announced budget also, because whether it be at the school level or at the higher education level, we certainly see a distinct focus on digitization and technology integration of all sorts. There is certainly a lot of emphasis which has been given on expanding the technical education, professional education, be it IIMs, be it medical education, be it STEM education. But in addition to that, one can also see the focus which is being given on skilling and skills of both nature. One, that we are talking about high-end skills, and we are also looking at increase in the apprenticeship programs, and we are looking at low-level skills. Now, this is something which I might like to take up, because not much has been talked on that. Because I was also trying to relate it to the economic survey, and also the employment figures which the latest PLFS has already given us, and see how the education sector plans are going to fit into the kind of employment survey data that we have recently received. So from here, I was looking at, if we are talking about the kind of skills, we are looking at skilling people for future. And so we are talking about 5 national level centers of excellence for skilling, that we are talking about Make in India, Make for World. So are we focusing on the industry and manufacturing sector? One question. The second, we are talking about high-end skills. So we are looking at AIN, how our students will get more skill towards that kind of a dimension. Now, when I looked at some of the employment figures, it showed that there is an increase in the workforce participation in the agricultural sector. Not just that it remains the dominant sector, but there is an increase in the participation in the agricultural sector, more so for the female employees. And also one sees that there is a decline in the services sector, and as well as the manufacturing sector. When we look at a further division of male workers who are lesser in the agricultural sector as compared to the female workers, one finds that they are more concentrated in those kind of sectors, probably which are hardly getting any kind of a focus when we are talking about skilling India for coming years. Because these are the sectors which are more informal in nature: the construction, the trade, the hotel industry, the restaurant, etc., transport, logistics, so on and so forth. So where is it that when we are looking at the apprenticeship programs, or when we are looking at opening these centers of excellence of skilling our youth on, and the focus on the technology and professional education, then is it so that we are missing out the larger proportion of our students from the main Bharat area, as we may call it? So that dimension needs to be looked into, and emerges as a major concern to me. The second important component that struck me was the role of the private sector. Needless to say, if we look at the proportion of students, whether it be at the school level or it be at the higher education level, one can see an increasing proportion of students in the private institutions. But as was pointed out by Professor Somen also, when we look at some of the head-wise or project-wise or scheme-wise allocations which have been meted in the recently announced budget, one can see that even the area of focus, that is research and innovation, and I'm not even questioning on the quality or the kind of research or innovation that we have been doing or we may be able to do in future. But even there, the role of private sector has been emphasized by providing a meaty share of the budget to them. Also, in the student financial aid, Professor Somen pointed out uh, at the scheme of that PM Research Fellowship. Now, although there is an increase in the student financial aid, this continues to remain a mere 4% of our total higher education budget. And here to the increase is only on the PM Research Fellowship scheme, which again is meant only for STEM education and technical education. So again, the main proportion of the students which comprise in the social sciences or humanities or the general education streams, they seem to be in trouble, and we really don't know how this is going to unfold in the coming years. As far as research and innovation is concerned, uh, although Professor Somen did point out at this that there is a decline in the budgetary allocation for research and innovation, but I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that from years together and consistently we are talking about becoming a knowledge hub, but the component of education budget which goes to research and innovation does not even come to 1% of our total budget, and this has remained so. It is a mere 0.6% even now. So how is it that we are looking at this whole idea of becoming a global knowledge hub and a skilled human resource base is something which is still troubling me. And yes, internationalization again, which was one of the major focus areas of the government, especially with the Study India program, and there were a lot of research fellowships to be given. On all these heads also one can see a decline even in the ASEAN fellowships. The champion services sector scheme, which has been highlighted for international promoting internationalization of higher education, again one can see a decline in the budgetary allocations made for this purpose. Also, we still do not know what does it hold as a capsule, whether it is only in terms of giving some kind of fellowships and freebies to promote inbound mobility of the students, or is it also related to internationalization of at home in a broader context of as to how we can bring the components of knowledge building, capacity building, or teaching and research in globalization and increasing internationalization components. Lastly, and not the least, so just to wind up, one of the pressing concerns with terms of underutilization of already inadequate funds which may be available. So efficiency and utilization of funds will continue to plague our economy if we do not give enough attention to this. How are we going to take care of the existing divide if the focus continues to remain on those kind of educational subsectors which cater to the hardly 10 to 15% of our student population? And last comment that I would like to make is how the distribution or the skill building exercise of the youth is going to get aligned with the kind of labor force distribution or the kind of industry growth that we are looking at in the coming years. So that kind of industry and academia interface and alignment as to how we are going to look at in coming years. Thank you very much, and over
Thank
to
you, Professor Khare. Thank you for bringing up certain issues, which also need deliberation maybe at a later stage, but we are running out of time. So excuse me if I ask Nalin to come a little later, as we have an advocate also on the panel, Anubaji, and she perhaps needs to go. Anubaji, we would be very much interested in listening about what is really, as an advocate, how would you really look at the budget with the Right to Education Act, and of course, the emphasis in the budget on Nari and Garib, and several of the categories that we have known in we understand in our own society, and particularly also because when we look at the question of the national education policy, where as I just pointed out that there are nearly a decline in the number of enrolled children.
Yes.
And the decline has taken place in some of the states which were already troubled with reference to enrollment, Bihar, UP, and also not to miss out the fact that Rajasthan could also be coming into the loop, because there has been a tremendous amount of decline in the number of government schools, maybe because of upgradation or whatever. So what does it mean insofar as right to education, particularly for the girl children? Because this is what happens in our society if something becomes far more restricted, or maybe allocations play out in favor of the rich. PM Shri is not everywhere, and PM Shri could be there in a district,
Right.
and the girls could be there everywhere, and there is very little allocation on that front. And what's really happening with other kinds of students' aids in the schools and all that needs to be really looked at within the budget, which I think really doesn't present a very rosy picture. So it is fine that we have appeased, as Professor Khadria said, the middle class has to respond. And there are people who are saying that the middle class, which have been given all these benefits, are not going to really invest, and they are not going to buy. They are going to invest in things which we traditionally know whether that is going to really enhance our investment in industry and create more jobs. So how would you really take, what would be your take, pointed 2 or 3 important points, because we are running short of time. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sinha, for having me on this panel. And I really appreciate IMPRI's initiative that every year they do such a webinar on budget as far as the education sector is concerned. And see, this budget basically focuses on, I'll be talking about right to education also. Just for 1 minute, I'll be sharing that the AI centers, the government has basically focused on AI centers of excellence, skilling, and expanded IITs and also the medical seats, which they are going to expand up to 75,000 in next 5 years, and increase funding for startups, though we don't know how it is going to be implemented at ground level, and the digital learning also. So all these areas, definitely they have focused on these important areas. And I remember that I have suggested also 2 years back, I have suggested that government should start increasing seats in IITs and medical colleges, because the reason being, it is not easy to create infrastructure. It is not easy to create infrastructure in 2-3 years. If the number of students, you will see, as far as IITs are concerned, JEE exam, NEET exam, there is an increase as far as the students are concerned from 7 to 8 lakhs in 2020 and 21 or 22. Now it has gone up to 10 lakhs, from 8 lakhs to 10 lakhs to 12 lakhs. And for NEET, there are around 25 lakh aspirants who have registered for the NEET exam last year, and for CUET also. For CUET also around 25 lakh students have appeared. And for central universities, I don't know the budget which they have proposed, that allocation is going to help or not as far as the central universities are concerned. Now talking about this RT allocation as far as the rural education is concerned, not rural, but as far as the RT education is concerned. So there are, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, there are around 17 crore students who are still enrolled in the under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, and almost 1 crore students are out of school. So we have to cater to the needs of those 1 crore students also. I don't know whether that figure is going to increase further, because earlier the children who were out of school during COVID has drastically now increased, and it has come to around 1 crore. And that is also not the actual data. There might be many other students who are still not in school, who are out of school. So government should definitely focus on Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, which is going to be implemented for the implementation of Right to Education Act. As far as Right to Education Act, most of the schools, government school in Maharashtra, UP, Bihar, then even Haryana, they have shut down many thousands and thousands of government schools, which is quite concerning. And as you have pointed out, sir, in Rajasthan also now they are going to shut down schools, or they are also going to club boys and girls government schools. So that is also very concerning. So my request or humble appeal to the government, that maybe for next year, I don't know this year whether they are going to do it or not, but as far as the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan is concerned, which caters to the need of 17 crore students or 18 crore or 20 crore students, there should be more allocation of funds for implementation of Right to Education Act. Because if we will not implement Right to Education Act, even we will not provide aid to the aided colleges, aided schools, we will not provide funds for RT quota, that is 25% quota in the private schools. Many schools, I think Maharashtra, I will tell you, last year government has cancelled the RT quota for private schools, and we have also opposed it, and the matter went to High Court and Supreme Court, and they have struck down the order of Maharashtra government that no, you cannot get away with RT quota. Government has to allocate fund as far as RT quota is concerned in private schools. So they have to increase the budget for Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, for implementing RT Act, for implementation of Right to Education Act. Then only we'll be able to cater to the needs of crores of students. As far as KVs are concerned, yes, there is an increase, no doubt. We have been requesting for the increase in seats as far as KV schools are concerned. That also government has taken care, and NVS also. Now Navodaya schools also 1.4 crore in KV and around 27-28 lakhs in Navodaya schools. So that they have increased, no doubt, but the budget allocation should be more as for implementation of Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan scheme. So my humble appeal to the government, if they can focus more on implementation of, they can focus more on allocation of the budget for implementation of Right to Education Act for Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, then I hope in future more and more students will be a part of this education system. Otherwise, whatever we are investing today in all the schemes, be it Atal Innovation or Vidya Shakti scheme, no doubt is a very good scheme where they're going to connect rural schools with broadband. So there will be broadband connectivity. The digital divide, definitely they are going to, as far as the digital divide is concerned, that will be taken care if this Vidya Shakti scheme will be implemented. It is a good scheme, no doubt. So until unless we will focus on Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, there will be no all these schemes, Vidya Shakti, Atal Innovation, Pustak Yojana, then PMRF, or the research and everything. Students will not be able to get the benefit of all these schemes. Students, especially from marginalized community, those who are from rich background, those who are from higher middle class, or now for middle class also the budget is very good. So there are chances that many parents will enroll their children to some of the best institutions as far as colleges are concerned, schools are concerned. But still there are crores of students who are out of school. So my that is the only point I would like to make, as requested by Professor Sinha sir, that you just focus on RT and Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So this is my input as far as this budget is concerned. But overall, it is a good budget, no doubt. And there's an increase of 100% seats as far as the ITs are concerned. From 65,000, now they are going to increase it up to 1.3 lakh in next 5 years. So that is something which I really appreciate. And that's all from my end, because I'm getting late.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I have to leave, and
Yeah.
best wishes to IMPRI.
Thank you. Thank you for your wishes, and thank you for the comments that you made. Anubhaji, I'm sorry for holding you late for such a long time. And now we move on to Professor Nalin Bharti. Particularly, I would like to hear from him because, what we have heard so far is that, IIM and IITs, and so these are the favored institutions where investments are likely to happen. But at the same time, we also have a situation where, there is a proportionately higher, as a consequence, the allocations are likely to favor the metropolitan towns, the bigger towns, and so on and so forth. Patna perhaps would be lagging behind, not just because it doesn't have the educational infrastructure, but also because other kinds of agglomeration economies do not really seem to be taking place in Patna. Of course, in comparison to other districts and towns of Bihar, Patna is certainly better off, but not so better off in reference to other metropolitan towns in India. So how would you look at the allocation, particularly with reference to, say, the smaller towns, the medium towns, and say other class 1 towns, in so far as spread of these initiatives which have been already mentioned by our friends on the panel. So over to you, Nalin.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sinha, and thank you, IMPRI, for organizing this event. I just wanted to touch upon some of the points which was missed out as a part of science and technology and research, and then I will come back to your question. So very quickly, if we can see the clean tech manufacturing mission. So this time, government is focusing on the EV, also for the solar panels. Last time also, in last budget also, this point was touched upon in the budget. So I am finding again, so a clear cut, what we see here, that there is a direction that we cannot grow like what we have grown in, what we have done in past. We have to at least change our uh, approach in terms of reaching to the sustainable development goals. India has to meet that because it is one of the major country in the world. So this budget looks sensitive in that sense. If I will also see nuclear energy mission for Viksit Bharat. The target is huge, and uh, India is targeting for 100 gigawatts by 2047. Current capacity is around 8 gigawatt, while United States are having the capacity of 97 gigawatt. So after around 2047, we are targeting the capacity which United States is having today. So this is one area which has it was also been discussed by Professor Rupa Manjari Ghosh, madam. And then I will also see this very important point, that is public sector driven research. In fact, a very recent thesis under my supervision, which was focusing on whether FDI has improved the intellectual property rights in India or not. And we were looking for the countries where India has signed its agreement with our uh, uh, that is called SEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. And we have seen that wherever we have a clause in our agreement in terms of investment and IPR linkage and how to protect intellectual property rights as a part of our agreement, we have not received uh, IPR applications or patent applications from the countries where we are having more investment, but we are flourishing. We are speeding up applications from those countries where we have agreements like SEPA and SESA. It shows that the countries which has more uh, clause related to IPR and FDI in the comprehensive agreements, those countries are better partners. So when we are looking for this public sector driven research, the private, I don't consider private only the domestic private investors. We have to also look at, because we live in a global world, and when we are looking for innovation, startups, R&D activities, giving 10,000 more fellowships, PM, Prime Minister fellowship, we are basically looking for a different India, which has to be more equipped with lots of new technologies and more R&D activities. So if we are looking for that, we have to also look for our future direction. That is basically how we can also convince our partner countries, those who are coming for investment. A small focus group discussion which we have conducted in Tokyo with pharmaceutical company, and we were trying to ask, especially in the JETRO office in Tokyo, that uh, why you are still investing in China, why you do not want to invest in India. And they were making it clear that it is not basically uh, it is not only because uh, China is a better performing country and giving us more return. It is also because of three other social issues, that Indians are very talkative, India has multilingualism, and Indians are having lots of curry in their lunch and dinner. So it's not always the economic indicators. It is also the social indicators, other cultural indicators. So investors are looking from their point that how easy it will be to invest in a country. So when we are looking this data of deep tech fund for funds or new startups, PM research fellowship, then connecting it to the uh, new environment friendly production system, we find that there is a huge pressure on India to do something and to catch some more investment, to have more growth, faster growth, and to somehow to catch those international investors and especially export partners and trade partners. And we should also have more export items. And somehow we find that there is a paradox whether we should become the exporting countries or we should substitute some of our import material. So we find that this budget is in between those paradox, and there is a struggling India which is coming out in my mind, that government is trying to bring India to showcase that there are something new happening in India. There is something different happening in India. There is something new happening in India, and then only we can again take some of the new initiatives in terms of international partnership. So I find that whatever new initiatives has been taken in this budget had some international linkage also, having some different meaning also. We should not only link this budget only for the domestic targets which we have always to fulfill, but we have also some of the important lessons from the geopolitical changes happening in the world. So this is my point. And second point that about how big cities and small cities are getting benefits. The government has also tried to balance this time a little bit. There are some investment in the cities like Patna. There are new institutions coming up to Bihar. But at the same time, we also find that those states which are more industrialized and better performing states, they will certainly have different benefits from these budgets because uh, even if Prime Minister research fellows are, it will be 10,000 in number, where they will come? They will go to IIT Madras, they will go to IIT Mumbai, or they will come to IIT Patna. And given the choice to the student, certainly they will go to Madras, they will go to Hyderabad, they will go to Mumbai. So it is not basically the fault of the institutions where they are situated, but it is also the facilities and other infrastructure which students wants to exploit to get more and more return after the end of these fellowships and to get more better opportunities in their life. So I just want to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nalan. Thank you for your comments. I think the collaborations and the international commitments, the geopolitical situations, they are all very important, and they have always been important. And therefore, some of the initiatives which we find in the budget for the last so many years, and particularly in this one, could be seen to be the logical outcome of certain kinds of developments which are taking place both in the field of science and technology and our global commitment. And as you rightly pointed out, the domestic commitment, of course, remains important. And therefore, we have to really, as Milton Santos says, that there are two circuits, the upper circuit and the lower circuit. It's very important to, in fact, join the two circuits so that there is a better flow of energy from one to another. So we'll come back to that. Thank you for your comments, and we move on to Dr. Suresh Reddy for the perspectives from say the non-governmental sector or the private sector, or whichever way. How would he like to look at the budget? Because and what perhaps what more he wanted to see in the budget. Dr. Reddy, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. As you said rightly, from the perspective of non-governmental organization, actually we are an implementers of educational programs on the ground across 13 states, 34 locations, starting from Anganwadi centers to senior secondary schools. So covering the all levels of the school education as per the National Education Policy, 5+3+3+4 years of education. And when I see this budget, as Professor Binod mentioned, that whatever the increase of the budget, if you see the compared to inflation rates, is not actually the increase of the budget, it is the status quo, maintenance kind of thing. But at the same time, this budget at school education level, it is promoting more of centers of excellence. That is what that my observation. When you see centers of excellence at national level, centers of excellence at the school level. So one such one is that the adult tinkering labs, they mentioned 50,000 ATL labs next 5 years at the rate of 10,000 labs per year. So it took 5 years time for Atal Innovation Mission to reach 10,000 number so far, but covered both private schools and government school segment, and mostly as mentioned that urban and private tier 2 kind of towns and area geographies. So now it is going to 50,000 ATLs, 10,000 per year. That means a big jump. Not in terms of the finances of the educational budget, but a sense of excellence point of view at the school level. This 10,000 per year means is a huge jump. And this is only covering the government schools. Here you are not talking about the private schools. So from that point of view, the government school children are going to be benefit a lot through this ATL labs. At the same time, there is a issue is that when you see the experience, last 5 years experience, setting up of lab is a simplest thing because it is a capital investment. You buy and set up the lab. But if you have to extract the value from it, when you use it, you can extract the value. So most of the things in ATL labs, that the children and educators have to have a background of electronics or mechatronics or computer science or mechanical engineering kind of thing. Then they know how to use this equipment provided in the ATL lab. So far, this ATL model is depending on the mentors from the industries. They can mentor these ATL schools where they can learn. So that mentorship, the ATL, that is partially successful in urban areas, but not in rural areas because there is no physical presence of mentors. They say virtual, and that is not as frequent as kind of thing. And it is not part of school curriculum. It is beyond school curriculum. How to make the children ready for the future, give the opportunity for them the future skills, or it's a maker space. So here the capacity building of the educators is the biggest challenge, that how government is going to be tackle this thing, if any strategy on that. But children compared to educators, they're much more proactive because of the curiosity, and they can trial and error kind of thing. They have curiosity kind of thing. They are much more faster learners, but they need to be handhold how to use these things, develop the prototypes to solve the social problems. This is the observation. At the same time, science labs point of view, there is no concept of science lab in middle schools, in the government schools where we are working. And second thing, senior secondary level also, there's not much budget allocations for the science labs. So here the question of the fundamental science concepts, either it is the physics or chemistry or the biology, these are neglected. So how it is not about the ATL is talking about digital, electronics, mechanics, mechanical kind of thing, but fundamental science, that is the something which is missing. That is the huge gap how to address things. As for the national education policy, it talks about vocational education starting from the class 6 onwards, digital literacy as well, these two things. So this ATL labs, all those things promote the white collar job and kind of thing, like the blue collar job. And not everybody goes to the white collar job also. So how to promote vocational education in our middle, secondary, senior secondary schools. So that is something also need to be looked at it as per the national education policy. That is something is missing. PM Shri schools, I appreciate that. These are the schools, apart from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Navodaya Vidyalaya, operational directly from central government. PM Shri schools fund the schools of the various state education department schools. Again, it is centers of excellence on the ground, a few schools where they get support. The challenge here is that even last year budget also, whatever the budget allocated, it was not fully utilized. So it is not allocation is an issue, but utilization is an issue. So how to do that? This time the budget also increased from 4,500 crores to the 7,500 crores. That is, again, you have to see, this could be a model for the, on the model of PMC, some of the states started the CM state schools. So this is a kind of promotion of the model schools, and that is one thing happening there. Center of Excellence in Artificial Intelligence is a very good investment point of view. Today we are talking about AI in every field, and down the line, next 5 years of time, we can see the sea change, like a transformational change. How butterfly transforms to, caterpillar transforms to butterfly, like that. There is going to be a huge sea change going to happen in the society. So it's a right investment, Center of Excellence in AI at the central level, but it has to be percolate down to the further to state level and regional level and kind of thing. You see that. And broadband for the school, secondary schools is the universalization of the connectivity. When you talk about any digital-based intervention in the school, we have to address 5, 6 things. One is about the infrastructure. the connectivity, the power supply, the capacity building, the monitoring and evaluation. So these are the few things we have to take care of. Whenever you talk about anything digital intervention in the schools, here at least connectivity point of view, the universalization at secondary level, welcoming initiative. At the same time, how to address provide equitable access, providing the infrastructure, which is an affordable infrastructure where children can able to get access, and also maintenance of the quality, bridging the digital divide. So especially rural and urban digital divide, it is there, huge there. So how to bridge those things? So this is something we have to the focus. So with these observations, I'm focusing other rest of the things our fellow panelists have explained those things there. And my submission is that one is it is not about the allocation but utilization of the budget, where the governance and timely the disbursement of the cash flows and kind of thing that makes a lot of difference. Second thing is about the rationalization of the school structures. So at this, especially at a primary level, so, as part of the RT Act, or to provide access, every small village has the school, but they are struggling a lot today's context. The single teacher, class 1 to 5, multi-grade teaching, and neither the teacher is just satisfying the making the sense to the children. Our children are able to get the service from the teacher. So the situation. So we have to see the how to rationalize the school primary level structure and provide the transportation to go to the nearby school, where a good school with all kinds of facilities, more teacher people ratio, and it can promote the quality education point of view. That is something one has to look at it to bring the efficiency in utilizing the scarce resources. So these are my observations, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. You see, on your last point, I'm telling on the basis of the government data, we have looked at it. The number of schools with fewer number of teachers, and particularly, even in some of the better off states. The question is where these schools are located. It's not that these schools are rampant everywhere. If we look at the social mapping of these schools, then you'll find that large number of these are in the rural, in the backward areas, in the forested tracts, in the tribal areas. So these are the places where these schools are located, which I would say it's not so much because of the lack of enrollment. Because we have seen that if we go by enrollment, the government doesn't have data on as to how many children in a village are out of school. Whether you have the state governments, they don't have meaningful data. In fact, we looked at we persuaded the Karnataka government. They said the schools are supposed to have. We went to the schools, then the school said, yeah, we do, but we have 100% enrollment, but we still found number of households where children were not enrolled. Well, these are stories, which we can rely on, or which we can bring about. But this the commitment insofar as primary education is concerned, to have neighborhood schooling is always a better option than transporting children to schools when there are situations, especially in hilly areas, where sometimes there is landslide, and it's difficult to transport children from one place to another because of several reasons. So we need to have efficient investment, absolutely. But to closing down schools in the name of efficiency, in the name of creating a kind of an architecture which would be much more vibrant, is something which I don't think is based on any scientific study. If we were to say, yes, I do agree that class teaching or multi-grade teaching really becomes counterproductive. But at the same time, if we have better allocation of teachers in these schools, they can become an asset. They can, because the better is the student-teacher ratio, better is the outcome. So I think if we were to perhaps look at things in a different way, things can be turned in favor of these smaller schools. But that's of course a continuing debate. Let's look at let's have the last round. Well, these are something which our panelists have talked about on what's there in the budget, and the indications are that this time there is some good news. And there is a likelihood that the direction of investment would really change the course of educational investment in India. But at the same time, the fact is that we have not been in a position to spend whatever be the allocations, particularly in areas which, in fact, if one were to perhaps compare it with, say, the previous 2016 and years before that, then what was really happening with the post-matric scholarships, and why is it that it's not happening now? I mean, some kind of a temporal reflection is required as to why money is not getting dispersed. So when we say PM3, are we really creating new schools? We are certainly not creating new schools. We have only upgraded the existing schools, and which is not a bad thing. I mean, I would say that let there be many such schools, with better equipments, better infrastructure, and that requires investment, capital investment, and that cannot come primarily through public-private. To some extent, it can, but majorly it has to come from the government, given the fact that we still do not spend so much money. So what more would the panel suggest that they expected from this budget, particularly in the context that we are in 2024-25 and 25-26? How do we really build up? What should be the direction in which we could perhaps have the education budget shaping up in future, particularly from now on? So a quick word from all the panelists, and we begin with Professor Khadria. If say just in about less than a minute. So
less than a minute. Well, I will use telegraphic language. Telegraphic language, I will say the Honorable Finance Minister would table the tax bill or whatever after a week. So there is a grace period where she can perhaps take our recommendation seriously.
Yeah.
And I will just point-wise, I'll mention.
Yeah.
Soman mentioned about regulation, which is a very important point. And that's one of the focus of the budget. But regulation is actually wrapped in the budget in the terms of deregulation. Means deregulation to bring in the private sector. Now, if we need to deregulate, then first we have to regulate. There is no regulation. The current example is the NAC, National Accreditation Agency. That is under the scanner of the CBI. And it's shameful that the corruption is so knee deep, that we don't want to look at it. That's point number one. Regulate before deregulation. Second is, I would say, on R&D, what Rupa said, and also Mona also mentioned, and our advocate panelist who left, who spoke about RTE, I think what we need to talk more is not RTE, but RTI, right to information. That would give us the handle to question things. And that's where I think in R&D, one question that I would like to raise is the government is allocating 20,000 crore to private sector for R&D. No, then what is the definition of R&D of the private sector if the private sector has to be given public money? So there is contradiction in terms, and you can see it should be the academia who should have been given, because the academia is 9% only, government is 50%, and 41% is private. So you are carrying
Right.
coal to Newcastle.
Yeah.
Third is mental health. Mental health was mentioned in the economic survey in a big way, but not addressed in the presentation of the budget. It is hiding perhaps in the pages. But that's very, very important. And what Dr. Reddy mentioned is very important, mentorship. Mentorship is directly connected with mental health, and that is related to productivity. And what Nalinji mentioned, that we are too talkative. We talk a lot, and we actually mean business. That's also a reflection of our mental health. So that's very important. We eat a lot of curry, without tomato, without potato, and without onion. We need to do that. Third, finally, I would say what is important that we have not addressed, and which I would have expected our finance minister, honorable finance minister, to address, is the Trump factor. The export is the fourth engine. Now, can you export? When there is going to be tariff wall, high tariff wall, already imposed on number of countries, Canada or Mexico or China are, at the drop of a hat, they are facing 25% to 10% of export wall. What is the guarantee that India's export will not face such a tariff wall? So that, I think, we need to have safeguards in the budget, this kind of budget, that there are, alternative scenarios. If not this, then the next one. So if I were presenting the budget, I would have presented 3 scenarios. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Khadria. Very important points. Yeah, Professor Shaumen, we go in the order of the classical definition of knowledge.
Okay. Very briefly, I think emphasis on innovation and startup and emphasis on skill, both of the emphases are being taken to an extreme extent. And I apprehend that in the process, the basic science and basic education might suffer erosion and dilution. So when you're talking about Atmanirbharata without doing enough for the foundation, I think is somewhat misplaced. We need to spend on basic infrastructure facilities, school and higher education, particularly higher education, is not in a good shape at all. So the budget is somewhat misplaced. We are focusing on innovation and skill at the expense of, I fear, the very basic foundation, education and basic science. Thank you.
Yeah, Shaumen, to add that, I would also say, when we say higher education is in a bad shape, the same could be said about higher secondary education, secondary and higher secondary education, because that's where, they both get interlinked. And insofar as basic science is concerned, I think we have to really start from the secondary schools, because that's where it's lacking the most. Rupa, your views, your last comments on science and technology, R&D, and particularly also on women in R&D, because you have been you have played a very, very important role in JNU as chairperson of the Gender Equalization Committee, of which I was incidentally a member also for a particular year. So what would you like to suggest? Rupa, over to Rupa.
The ma'am is not here. You can
ma'am has left. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay, then we go to Nalin. Is Nalin there? Nalin has also left?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I was just thinking that whatever programs and new initiatives has been taken, it has to be also linked with the international investment as well as the institutions, international institutions. If we have to come up with lots of innovation, innovation cannot be worked in a closed room. You have to interact with others. You have to have the partnership in education. You have to have lots of running activities with international institutions on daily basis. And within the country also, when we say that we rely on the private institutions and initiatives, that's not a bad idea. But at the same time, like the point which was mentioned by previous speaker, that academia industry linkage, that is the main point to go ahead with the R&D activities and innovation. It cannot be only the budget which can flourish the entire innovation environment in the country. You have to have a proper day-to-day activities within the country as well as at international level. Then only we can really move ahead towards the Viksit Bharat.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in that context, let me also add that we also need to really have some kind of networking of Indian institutions. Say, for example, what Patna IIT is doing doesn't stay in isolation. It's also linked with what Madras IIT is doing. Maybe in specific areas where they have mutual expertise and they work in that area. So that will certainly enhance the capabilities of students in Patna. That will also enable people to, in fact, go to Patna, and choose Patna IIT as one of the centers. And this is not just Patna; it may apply to several other kinds of institutions. Like one of the suggestions which was made in 2006, 2007. That with the UGC, because I was member of that committee, in which we had made that instead of inviting people from outside the country, we should also have system where Indian professors could in fact allocate themselves in some rural or maybe Mufassal universities located in smaller areas for a semester or so, and teach there. I mean, if you provide some kind of an allocation for that, that would certainly help building up capacity and also address the question of mentorship, as was pointed out by Professor Dr. Reddy. Pratibha, your comment, and then we go to Monaji.
Yeah, I feel that we need to focus more at the budget process, because unless if we start from the planning and bottom-up approach or participatory planning, if it is not there, then every year, 1st February, we will get this kind of document where Finance Ministry is actually redistributing whatever resources they have. This is one point. And the second point is that we are always highlight states' absorptive capacity is not there, so underutilization. But this policy narrative that resource is not a problem, it's the problem of underutilization. We need to counter that narrative, because under allocation is still a problem. And every component of school education and higher education, whether it's faculty or teachers, non-teaching staff, or capacity building infrastructure, everywhere we need more resources. So under allocation is a serious problem, and there is need for more resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Monaji, we come to you, particularly with reference to the fact that since you were in this National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, government has been making commitments after commitments that they are going to fill up all the teaching positions in central universities, and also ask the state university to do the same. Budget after budget, we haven't really seen much of an initiative, whether it's a question of the budget or it's outside that. How do we really address the question of teachers, faculty members and their the dwindling number? In DU it may happen, in JNU it may be done, but these are not the two universities. I mean, if you look at the larger scenario, you find that there is, a few lakhs that was reported by the Minister of Education, say about a year and a half ago. And the vacancies are there. What are we doing about the vacancies?
Well, so one can clearly see uh, that the government may not itself be interested in filling up these vacancies, because there is a rise in this whole concept of contractualization, not just in other sectors, but very much in the education sector now, both at the higher as well as the lower levels of education. Uh, so it is very difficult to comment on that if the will in itself is missing. Also, one can
Because
see,
but our new national education policy is certainly trying to place itself on a distinguished pedestal where it talks about quality, but has it
sorry,
done enough to in fact
that
build up quality, and
that was
especially with contractual teachers who really doesn't see a future within the same university, and contractual teachers have been going on. I think your university must have done some study of what is really happening with between the contractual teachers and the quality of education, higher education. I mean, if there is one, then the government should be informed about it. No.
so as if the government doesn't know about it, or there are so many wonderful authors who have written about this uh, whole issue of contractualization in the education sector. We have been talking about guest faculty, we have been talking about uh, various kinds of nomenclature which has been used in various states for this kind of a contractualization, which has existed from years now. uh, However, what I'm more concerned about is about the quality, and that was something which I was going to talk about, because not just the national education policy has been talking about the quality dimensions, but also the SDG goal has been talking about how access to quality education can be ensured for all. So lifelong learning opportunities and quality education for all. But if you look at this initiative, I spoke about continuity in my previous, the time that was allotted to me. And if you look at this current budget, you will realize there was a mega scheme which was started by the government on training of higher education teachers under the Malviya mission. Now, even under that head, there has been a decline in the allocations made in this budget. And I'm not even going down to the level of analyzing the kind of impact that scheme has had on improving the quality of the teachers. Nonetheless, quality is not just about teacher being a permanent or a regular teacher, but also by way of the learning environment which is created, or the culture which can be built in our campuses, the kind of infrastructure. So many of our panelists over here have highlighted that it is not just about opening the labs, or it is not just about creating the digital or the IT infrastructure, but it is also about making our own fellow colleagues very well versed and adept at using them to the best possible, in the best possible ways. But just to wind up and put one or two points which came to my mind. Now, today, when we are talking about whether the higher education should be more knowledge oriented or skill oriented, maybe we have just crossed over that boundary of discussion anymore, and we now have to accept that yes, skill building has to be a part of the higher education sector also. So then, when we look at this budget and we find that there is an emphasis on uh, two levels of skills that probably we talk about. So we are looking at high-end skills or higher order skills of various nature, which are very much technology oriented, very much high-tech oriented. And then we are also seeing a mega increase in the apprenticeship scheme. So probably we are looking at low order skills. But where is that major chunk of middle order skills that the major chunk of our student population might be aspiring for? And in the coming years, it is that bulk which we will be falling short of if we are wanting to become a skilled human resource hub. The second dimension that I would like to bring to your attention maybe is with respect to, well, I don't see any harm. Like, okay, it is good to promote professional and technical education, particularly medical education, which had been lacking the attention from a very long time. So that's a good step in the direction, maybe particularly after the COVID and all. But when you look at the workforce structure of our own country, and when we see that uh, still the larger proportion is in the agriculture and allied sector, and we have had a huge network of agricultural universities in our country. We are talking about the Indian knowledge system, and the Indian knowledge system is not just about mythological books. We are a house of knowledge of various kinds, be it the agricultural practices, be it our own architecture, be it our own historical achievements of all nature. So are we even thinking about allocating anything specific to our own strengths? Are we wanting to capitalize our own strengths in terms of the existing network of educational institutions that we have? And that is what is troubling my mind. And
Thank
maybe I'll
you.
stop here. We are already getting late. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Dr. Reddy, last comment, but very brief. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. I always will
Sorry.
brief. And especially from the education system are attracting almost 10,000 crores from the corporate world. As a part of the CSR annually, 30,000 crores is flowing to the society in terms of CSR projects, out of which 30,000 crores, out of which 10,000 crores coming to the education and skilling. So apart from this, 10,000 crores education sector is attracting, there is a huge potential linkages between the higher education institutions to the school education institutions, schools, industry to the educational institutions, private schools to the government school collaborations kind of thing, and the internships from the higher education students to the schools kind of thing. A lot of knowledge, systems, and process beyond the budgets. So that can add value to the what traditionally the budget allocations coming from the governments and kind of thing. How to leverage such kind of experience, expertise, ideas, and knowledge and kind of thing. So it is something as a part of the national education policy, the either central government or state governments proactively try to engage with these institutions and corporates, the experts for the education system growth. These are my final comments.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the panelists. Professor Khadria, sorry for having taken a longer time than was initially allotted to us. But I think, the comments which have been made were very useful. I think, this was a far more comprehensive comments on the budget, but, the scope of the budget was not just confined to education per se, but we were also looking at several other aspects, related aspects. Thanks to Khadria, Professor Khadria, thanks to Shaumin Chattopadhyay ji, thanks to Reddy Saab, thanks to Mona Khareji, Nalin, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Kundu. And of course, Rupa Manjari, our friend, is not here. But my personal regards and thanks to everybody here. I don't know whether I can wind up such extensive discussion, but I think it was all self-reflective. I've forgotten all the points which have been made, but I think Ria would certainly take note of that and maybe put it on your website for others to read and benefit from. So thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, IMPRI, for giving me the opportunity. And my apologies for initially delaying the process because there was some problem with my browser, and I keep doing that. So sorry for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you so much,
Vinod
sir.
bhai, namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
Bye.
we'll be releasing a press release as well as an event report regarding this session, so other
Namaskar.
participants and leaders can go through that.
Yeah.
So as we
Thank
come to
you.
the end of today's discussion, I, Riya Rawat, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Center for ICT for Development. I would like to thank all of you for attending today's deliberation, a panel discussion on education, science and technology, research and development, and Union Budget 2025 and 2026. We are grateful to our chair for the session, Professor Sachidanand Sinha, and our esteemed panelists, Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy ji, Professor Binod Khadaria ji, Professor Mona Khare ji, Professor Nalin Bharti ji, Professor Somin Chattopadhyay ji, Professor Prativa Kundu ji, Advocate Anuba ma'am, and Professor Rupa Manjari ji for taking part in the discussion and enlightening us. We thank all our participants who have raised some who have participated today in today's deliberation, and we are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube channel or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We look forward to welcoming you for the day 4 of our budget deliberations tomorrow, that is February 4th at 3 p.m. for gender, social inclusion and union budget, followed by population health and union budget 2025 and 2026 at 6:30 p.m. You may also find more thematic events and book discussions under IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wish you a very good evening. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.